Welcome to this week's episode of Meynell TV, where I hope to bring a little bit of joy, knowledge and thinking into your lives. This week, I want to talk about children's rights. Now, I hope you, like me, are a firm believer in the child's right to play, that you subscribe to the United Nations Charter on the Rights of Children, Article 31, and are familiar with General Comment 17 that explains the paragraph in Article 31 in more detail so that governments know best how to implement it. But what we've been seeing right the way through this plague, COVID-19, coronavirus pandemic, is that the right for children to play has not appeared on governmental agendas in most countries around the world, not just the UK. I know that in Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon spoke directly to children and made some very nice comments, but the only information we're getting related to children is about get them back into school because they need education, they need formalized learning. What the children need is play. It is play that gets a child through a time of crisis. Opportunities to play build resilience. Opportunities to play help children through catharsis, the playing out of negative experiences. When they play, children can play both on their own but also with other children. That opportunity to play has to be paramount to any post-pandemic consideration. This week, IPA England have put out a statement about the need for children to play and have access to play spaces as soon as possible, and calls on government and other agencies to be proactive and positive in their approach. Please look at it on the IPA website. Welcome, Sean, to this week's edition of Meynell TV. Really glad you could join us. I am excited about what you've got to say because, well, I've been following your videos on Facebook, and I like the way you present, and you've usually got some really great stuff to talk about. It's a strange time that we're living in now. The world is not the world as we used to know it. You have a couple of jobs. How is not going to your daily jobs affecting you?
Well, I think in the first instance, it's a bit of a identity crisis, because I don't think we realise how much our jobs, especially as play workers, where it can sort of infiltrate into all parts of your life, whether it's preparing for a play session or reflecting on a play session or advocating for the child's right to play. And then all of a sudden that's just taken away and you sort of feel like you can't do the normal stuff anymore. And then I think, well, who am I? Who is Sean without play in his life? So yeah, it's been tricky to adapt.
Who is Sean without play? What are you doing?
Lots of Netflix, lots of Twitter, lots of politics.
In your day job, you are communications officer at the Venture in Wrexham. Now, the Venture is an adventure playground, an old established one. How do you decide what to include in all these Facebooks and media stuff you do?
Well, at the moment, it's more tricky than it usually is. So under normal circumstances, we look at evidence of play on the adventure playground whilst the children are all in school, to sort of engage in a bit of conversation with the community. And then if the playground's open, then the children just provide all the content and we don't really have to think about it, apart from what impact us filming and covering that stuff whilst they're playing has on them playing. With the videos that we're doing daily, it's focused a lot around what's happened in history on this day, and that can get tricky. I've tried, for example, to avoid death. I don't talk about death too much.
How are you keeping play at the center of what you're doing?
That's the tricky part, because it can seem very much one way. But one of the ways I've ensured that play is still in there is the Wrexham County Borough Council's Play and Youth Support Team have been putting out a weekly bulletin for families. And on that is a playful timetable where they give you ideas for indoor and outdoor play. And then what I try and do is not only tell people about what's on the timetable, but then give it a go myself, which can have some very comic results.
Hence the handstands in the most recent one.
Yeah, the handstands. And today I've been bowling in my kitchen with empty Actimel bottles. And I didn't have a ball, so that was with a tub of like lip balm. One
of the things I really liked about the videos you were doing whilst the venture was open was the stuff around looking at how things have been moved and the effects of play, or what did you call it? Evidence of playing.
Yeah, I think I call it play evidence. I've heard it called play archaeology as well, which I quite liked.
How can other people be doing that now?
Well, I spotted one. I was walking the other day, and there was this strange mound of like needles from a tree.
Okay.
And I thought, that doesn't look right. What's happened there? And then what it turned out to be is they'd tried to make a snowman, but out of these needles that had fallen from the tree. But apart from that, I suppose it's really tricky, because there will be those subtle evidences of play, but they're not necessarily going to be in public places, because most children are in their back gardens still, if they're lucky enough to have one.
What do you think will happen with you and comms once the children come back then?
Well, I think the important thing will be to record this, have a record of this time. And I think the best people to give that record is the children themselves. So not only what has it been like, what have you been doing, but also seeing them on the playground and how they go back to that way of being. And there'll be a massive deficit in terms of like affection, and there'll also be barriers that they've now put up in terms of touch. And like, I walk around a corner now and I'm terrified that somebody's going to be there, and it's going to take a while for that to go back to normal. But there's also going to be some really intriguing observations that come from that.
Do you think some of that paranoia will show itself in the children's play?
Yeah, undoubtedly so. How it will present itself in terms of archetypes and characters, I'm not entirely sure. An interesting one that's doing the rounds is this quiz on Facebook.
Tell me more.
One of the question, it was like, what if coronavirus was an animal, what animal would it be? And questions like that. And there's been some quite interesting responses. And I'd love to capture that on film, to have children in conversation.
Of course, taking care that when you have the children in conversation, you're doing so in such a way that doesn't interrupt their play.
Oh, of course. Yeah. It reminds me of, because one of the things that's been really successful here in Wales has been a holiday hunger playwork pilot. So children who would normally get free school meals, the idea was that was distributed in holiday time through play provision, but indiscriminately so. So whether you got free school meals or not, you would still be able to get them. But what then happened was, at a certain point in the day, there'd come a call from the kitchen going, the kitchen's open. And then all of a sudden, all these games and activities would just stop.
Yes.
And I think, right, it's really important that the children eat, but wow, we've just annihilated so many games and activities.
Yeah, we had that on the after school club that I used to run, that tea time would be announced loudly. And I had the same reaction as you. And so what happened in the end was that, children would be looking to see, and when it was ready, the first couple of children would be told, and the word would gradually creep out across the site until everyone who wanted it had come, apart from one child who never turned up. He was playing with this whole set of Small World characters, some playing that had been carrying on for him day after day after day. So in the end, the staff would just take a plate of the food in, put it down on the mat within arm's reach, and creep out again. And he would almost unconsciously be reaching for the food and eating it. And I think that's really important. Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. As I expected, you have said some amazing things, really some stuff for people to go away and think about. Thank you so very, very much. Bye.
Diolch, bye.
And now come with me as we go over to the big chair for this week's Playwork story. This week's story, Putting the Theory into Practice, was written by Liz Hooper when she was working in Basingstoke. During a classroom session on our diploma in playwork about risk-taking in play and assessing risk-benefit, we were asked to rate how comfortable we felt on children taking part in various dangerous activities, such as climbing trees, using a staple gun, using the kettle to make hot drinks, and using knives, rating with 1 being not comfortable at all and 10 being very comfortable. Now, I could recollect sessions of when our children had done most of the things, and although the odd ones, such as a time when a child was stood dancing on top of a 30 centimetre round, 3 metre high pole of a climbing frame in the park, chanting, "Look at me, look at me," looking for reaction, had made my tummy turn, I genuinely felt confident with most of them and rated them all but 1 above 8. However, it was only during the following week that a child was sent to test me. I was stood talking to one of the children over the kitchen counter. There in front of us stood an empty cup, and he hesitantly asked whether he could make himself a cup of tea. Inside me, various emotions arose, such as, ooh, that would be breaking the rules, to, ouch, hot drinks amongst children, to, what am I letting myself in for if the other 29 asked to make a hot drink? I then suddenly came to my senses with a flashback of the 8 I had confidently rated the activity in our course, so I responded to him confidently with a yes, and I think he was as shocked and as pleased as I was. I nervously watched as he poured the hot water and cringed when 3 sugars entered the cup, but I felt quite pleased with myself, and he seemed pleased with his achievement as well. A comment from a colleague was, "Are we letting them have hot drinks now?" "I see no harm," I replied. "What if they all want it?" "Well, as long as they drink it here with me." Responses from some of the other children were interesting. One child gasped and asked, "Why is he allowed a cup of tea?" I replied with, "Because he asked." And the child then followed with a request for a cuppa for another child. 2 down, 27 to go. A lucky escape, as it's now dinner time. Now, what I like about this is it's showing that Liz has taken her learning, internalized it, and it's immediately affecting her practice. Yeah. Some people think that doing training courses is meaningless, that you're just getting a piece of paper. But take it into the workplace, and again, here is another person showing incredible respect to a child's preferences and altering the organizational rules and practices in order to meet what the child wants. And that has got to be a fundamental of good playwork practice. Well, that's it for episode 3 of Meynell TV. I really hope you enjoyed the show. Huge thanks to Sean Edwards. everything he had to say today. We'll be back next week with our special guest, Michael Follett, talking about play and schools. Use the hashtag Meynell TV up on our social media channels, and please like and subscribe and give us your comments below. Tell us who you would like us to interview or anything else you would like to see on Meynell TV. Have a great week. Stay safe.